Welcome to the discussion, folks. We're diving into how global power dynamics are shifting in 2025, with China, Russia, and India stepping into roles that seem to have the West scrambling.
Absolutely, it's a whirlwind, and it feels
Right.
like the old geopolitical maps are being redrawn almost in real time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like imagine a world where traditional Western alliances are suddenly facing a multipolar challenge. This SCO summit in Tianjin really crystallizes that shift.
Right, the SCO summit is um, this central moment where emerging voices from China, Russia, and India are not just offering comments, but actively reshaping the narrative on the global stage.
And what's striking is that it's not just a routine meeting, it's a statement, a sort of declaration that the old order is um, no longer the only way to frame international relationships.
Yeah, and think about it. The summit isn't just a gathering, it's a signal, that the so called global south is rising. And it's pushing back against a Western centric view, creating a
Yep,
narrative of a new world order.
exactly. And when you look at the outcomes like the Tianjin Declaration and the SEO Development Strategy 2035, they're basically mapping out a long term vision for how power might function differently on a world stage where multipolarity is the norm.
And there's this strong emphasis on something called the Shanghai spirit, a kind of shared ethos that places cooperation over confrontation. It's fascinating how this forms a counterpoint to Western alliances that traditionally thrived on separation.
Right? And it's like these leaders are saying, look, we're not trying to drag you into old rivalries. We're crafting something new that challenges the old hierarchies.
Sure, but do you think the narrative of the West in full blown panic is a bit oversimplified? I mean, isn't there nuance in how the West is responding?
That's a good point. While it's certainly dramatic to say panic, the discourse does highlight genuine concern about a redistribution of global influence. It's more like an urgent call for the West to recalibrate its own strategies amid rising multipolarity.
Fair enough. It definitely stokes debate, especially when you consider that, historically, power shifts have always been messy.
Exactly. It's like, think of it as the tectonic plates shifting underneath an old continent. The old strategies just don't hold up anymore as these new alliances and ideas rise in prominence.
Right? And I mean, the fact that leaders like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are effectively coordinating at these summits sends a clear message about their ambitions to provide an alternative path to global governance.
Yep, it's almost as if they are drawing a fresh map of alliances, one that's less about the Western model and more about a multipolar, inclusive approach that actually gives more voice to countries in the global south.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because it challenges the traditional narrative of Western superiority.
And the incorporation of countries like India further nuances this. With India's economic and strategic emergence, it's less about a binary East West conflict and more about a complex interplay of interests.
Right? But don't you think there's some risk here? I mean, aligning these massive players might also sow seeds of internal friction. Multipolarity sounds great, but it could be hard to sustain, especially when strategic interests diverge.
Absolutely, that's the tricky part. It's like a dance where all partners have to move in sync, and if one missteps, the whole choreography, or rather, the global stability, could be thrown off balance.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. And while the narrative of the SEO summit paints it as a unified front, the underlying dynamics could actually be much more, you know, competitive than collaborative.
Right, right. And then there's the economic angle. With China leading massive economic initiatives and Russia and India contributing their own quirks, it's not just a geopolitical shift, it's an economic restructuring too. A recalibration of trade, finance, and influence.
The economic reshuffle is particularly compelling. It's almost like the old playbook is being tossed aside, and new models of currency, investment, and trade are coming to the fore, like an entirely different game.
Exactly. And you see that even in the rhetoric, terms like Tianjin Summit and SKO Development Strategy 2035 are not merely bureaucratic phrases, they're indicative of a strategic vision that spans decades.
Yeah, and that long term outlook really puts the West in check. especially if they're used to quick fixes and immediate results rather than these grand strategic narratives.
Right. It's like trying to compete in a marathon with sprinters. The assessment is on the endurance and vision rather than immediate impact.
Mhm. And that inherently challenges the Western model, which often relies on rapid, sometimes unsustainable, responses to crises instead of steady, long term planning.
Exactly. And another crucial aspect is how these summits are reshaping international institutions. The SCO, for instance, is not just a forum for dialogue, but an institutional framework that might actually steer global norms in the coming years.
Yeah, and you can almost see it as a um, parallel structure to things like NATO, but one that's more inclusive of non Western perspectives, an alternative center of gravity in international relations.
Right? It's like they're reimagining global order from the ground up, challenging existing institutions, and even creating new platforms for collaboration and conflict resolution.
Hmm. And that shift is not just symbolic. It could materially affect how international law, trade agreements, and security pacts are negotiated in the coming decades.
Exactly. And this cascading effect means that the West is, in a way, forced to reevaluate its own positions and alliances. It's no longer simply about matching strengths, but rethinking strategies entirely.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting. The involvement of nations like Iran and other regional players, all of which are, you know, subtly integrated into this new bloc. It adds layers of complexity beyond just the big three: China, Russia, and India.
Exactly. And think about how this could reshape our understanding of legitimacy in international relations. Authority is no longer monopolized by whoever sits in Washington or Brussels, it's more dispersed.
Hmm. Which is both refreshing and a bit uncertain. With more voices comes more potential for disagreement, right?
Absolutely, that's the counterbalance. The beauty of the idea is in the diversity of viewpoints, but at the same time, it's inherently more complex to manage and coordinate.
Yeah, and while the new order might promise a more equitable setup, it risks fragmentation if these voices can't find common ground consistently.
Right, and that's why the narrative of the SEO and its affiliated strategies is so compelling. It's both a promise and a challenge. It begs the question of whether a multipolar world can maintain cohesion in the long run.
And I wonder, isn't it almost too optimistic in assuming that all these differing interests can eventually harmonize into a unified strategy?
That's a fair critique. There's inherent tension there. The challenge is, will these nations prioritize collective progress over narrow national interests? That's the million-dollar question.
Right. And it's like they're setting up a long term experiment in global governance, where success hinges on whether diversified power centers can truly coexist without clashing.
Exactly. And the fact that these strategies are outlined with a view towards 2035 indicates a commitment to a very forward thinking agenda, even if the journey there might be rocky.
Hmm. And that's what keeps geopolitical analysts like us so engaged, because we're watching how these high stakes bets will play out over the next decade or so.
Right, it's like we're witnessing the rewriting of the global playbook. And while the Western narrative often assumes a defensive posture, this new approach is all about asserting influence through evolution and transformation.
Yeah, and there's an element of inevitability here. Change is coming, whether the West likes it or not, a rising tide of new ideas and new powers that challenge the status quo.
Exactly. It's a dynamic stage, a kind of chess game with long term moves rather than immediate tactical strikes. And that fundamentally shifts the question from who's on top to how do we all coexist.
Hmm. Definitely a more collaborative yet competitive environment. It reminds me of an orchestra where every section needs to tune in perfectly, or else the symphony falls apart.
Right? And while that analogy, really captures it, it also highlights the potential discord if one section starts playing out of sync.
Yeah, and that's where I respectfully challenge the notion that these new alignments will automatically lead to harmonious outcomes. Sometimes the clash itself might be a prelude to yet another form of instability.
Absolutely. That's a healthy debate. The tectonic shifts we're observing could lead to both cooperation and conflict, and understanding that duality is key to grasping the global picture.
Right. It's a complex and multidimensional evolution, one that will keep us on our toes as we watch these historical changes unfold.
Exactly. And whether you see it as a period of disruption or a long anticipated reordering, the message is clear. The world is changing, and there's not a single player who's immune to these forces.
And it's this very transformation that offers us numerous insights into the future of geopolitics, an ongoing dialogue between tradition and innovation.
Absolutely. And as we keep following these trends, it's crucial to remain open and critical about the narratives coming out of all sides, whether they're painted by Western media or emerging voices from SEO.
Right. And that critical lens is what keeps the debate alive, ensuring we consider all perspectives as the new world order takes shape.
Exactly. And it's been a real pleasure unpacking these ideas with you today. It certainly gives us plenty to reflect on as we move forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for the enlightening discussion. I look forward to seeing how these changes continue to evolve and challenge our understanding of global power structures.